Hello Primary 4 and welcome to today's numeracy lesson. We've moved on now from fractions, and in our maths we've been looking at turns, and you'll notice that our learning intention for today is that you're going to be able to tell the time on an analogue clock at 1/4 past, 1/2 past and 1/4 to the hour. Pardon me, there's a lot of learning that you can bring in now that we've been doing over the past 2 weeks to really help us understand how an analogue clock works. By the end of today, you should be able to explain that a clock is made up of 4 quarters, that it's also made up of 2 halves, and that you'll be able to read the time using the terms past the hour and to the hour. Let's move on. Let's quiz ourselves first on our knowledge of time. Now, time is just a measure, and we use time to measure how long something is taken, or the distance between 2 points in time. And our time we measure in seconds, or even before that, milliseconds. You might notice that on races, that it measures in minutes and milliseconds, because sometimes racers are that close together that even a second is too long a time, so they have to actually look at smaller times as well. But luckily we're just focusing on seconds, hours, days, months and years. How many seconds are there in a minute? Have a think. What do you think? There are 60 seconds in a minute. How many minutes are there in an hour? There are 60 minutes in an hour. How many minutes do you think will be in 1/4 of an hour then? Remember how to find a quarter? It's half and half again. So have a look. What is half of 60? Well, half of 6 is 3. So half of 60 must be 30. And then let's half again. What's half of 30? Well, that's 15. So there are 15 minutes and 1/4 of an hour. And then we've already discussed how many there are in half an hour. What's half of 60? 30. How many days are there in a month? Oh, that depends on the month. And we'll cover that a little bit more later on. But the shortest month, which we've just passed yesterday, was February. And yesterday, you'll notice, was February the 28th. So today is the 1st of March, which has 31 days in it too. But our months range from 28 days to 31 days. Of course, except for every 4 years. And we'll cover that in a second. So how many days in a year? Normally, if it's 365, but once every 4th year we have something called a leap year, where an extra day is added to February. And that means that on a leap year, there are 366. Was this year a leap year, do you think? Well, that depends. We know it wasn't, because if it was a leap year, then today would have been the 29th of February, but actually today is the 1st of March, so it's not a leap year. I wonder if you can find out when our next leap year is due. Moving on. So you can see here that we're bringing in our knowledge of quarters and our knowledge of turns, and that really helps us figure out how to read on an analogue clock. Now, an analogue clock is the clock that we see here. It's made up of 2 hands, and it goes from 12 all the way around back to 12 again. And it has 2 hands, one long hand that's used to measure minutes, and a shorter hand that's used to measure hours. It's made up of 4 quarters. So how many minutes are there in a 1/4 of an hour? Well, when we've got a 1/4 of an hour, you could see here, if we're starting, imagining on the hour at 12, a quarter of an hour, for each increment here, you'll see that it stands for 5. So that would be 5, 10, 15. So there are 15 minutes that the big hand would turn around, and that would mean that 15 minutes have passed a quarter turn. And just to bring in here, look, it forms a right angle. Just like this. So it starts on the 12, and then you'll see slowly the big hand will turn around and it will keep moving just like in a turn. When we tell the time, and sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to get used to this, we talk about how many minutes past the hour they are, and then how many minutes to the next hour there are. That can take a little bit of time to get your head around, and that's okay. We've got plenty of time to do that. So let's look at this time. So again, remember, our shorter hand measures the hours that have passed, and our minute hand measures the minutes that have passed, the longer hand. So what do we notice here? What can you see? Have a look at where the big hand is pointing at. It's pointing at the number 3. And you can see that it's turned a full quarter turn to reach the number 3. And where's the small hand pointing? Well, it's not quite on the 1, is it? It's actually a quarter of the way from the 1 to the 2. Can you see that? Because your hour hand can actually measure minutes if you know to think about, well, quarter at least, think about how far its journey is between hour 1 and hour 2. So you can see it's a quarter of the way past the 1. Let's have a look here though. So if you have a look here, let's look at the big hand. You can see that it is pointing at the number 9, but it's a quarter of the way to the next hour. So what hour is the little hand nearly on? Well, it's nearly on 12, isn't it? So that's why we say this time would be quarter of an hour to 12. So it's quarter to 12. Let's have a look here. So as you can see, we've got our big hand here that has travelled half the way around the clock, which means that 30 minutes of the hour have passed. And if you look at the hour hand that tells us where we are within our hour, that's halfway between the 3 and the 4. And because it's still within the section of the clock where we talk about past, so remember for the first half, we say the time is past the hour, and then the next half, we're counting down to the next hour. So it becomes to the hour. Let's have a look. What time do you think it is? Well, it's still within the hour 3, so it's half past 3. Let's have a look here then. Which clock do you think is showing quarter past? So think back to when we had our clock face at the start. What side measured the time past the hour, and what side measured to the next hour? Well, we know it's quarter past when the big hand is on the number 3. So have a look. Which one is it? Have you found it? That's right, it's this one here. What one's showing half past? So remember, think about the journey round the clock, and when we had the clock divided up into quarters and halves. Also, what number shows half past? Have you figured it out? That's right, it's this one. And now, what clock is showing 1/4 to? So remember, once we go past the half past stage, we're counting down until the next hour, and our hour hand helps tell us too, because it's 1/4 to the next hour, and our minute hand is at the number 9, which is also 1/4 to, so it's this one. Okay, I know that I've thrown a lot of learning at you, and sometimes reading analogue clocks, especially because it's 1/4 and then 1/4 to, and what hand's the big hand, what does that tell, and what hand does the little hand tell, and I know it can be a little bit of confusion there for you. Got a couple of videos here that you can watch. So I've got a nice little video here that if you click on, it will go over hours and maybe just teach it in a different way, because sometimes we need to see it in a different way, sing it in a song. If you've got watches or clocks in the house, why don't you ask your grown-up if you can have a look at the clock, turn it around so you can see how the hands move around the clock as things are going. Because sometimes, remember, with our concrete learning, we actually need to touch things and feel things to help our body and our brain take in this information. There's a bit of revision in this video, but even if you just search on YouTube or whatever, you can get loads of videos that help you learn how to tell time. If you found that super simple, you already knew how to tell time 1/4 to, 1/4 and you wanted to challenge yourself to our next step, which is learning to tell the time to the nearest 5 minute, this video will take you all the way up through this. And of course, I've got a nice little practice game for you here. It works its way from hours to half past, and then to 1/4 and 1/4 through levels 1 to 3. And again, if you want to challenge yourself, you can do it to the nearest 5 minutes or to the nearest minute. So let's have a little look at this website. So you just click it here. It will take you to a game. There's worksheets there if you were interested. Click on the game. And you have the option, if that's where you are, you want to just start from the beginning again, you can read to the nearest hour, read to the nearest hour and half hour, and read to the nearest 1/4 hour, is which we've been learning today. So let's click on this. If you want to challenge yourself, keep it on timed game, but if you just want to just take your time and think about it and not have that pressure, click untimed game. What is the time? So we've got our options here: 10:30, 9:30, 9 minutes past 6, or 6 minutes past 9. Let's look at what our hands are telling us. Remember, the long hand tells us minutes, and the minutes are pointing at the half part of the clock. Let's have a look at what our hour hand's telling us. Well, it's still in the 9th hour, isn't it? It's not reached 10 yet, and it's halfway between the 9 and the 10. So it must be, is it 10:30 or is it 9:30? It's 9:30 because it hadn't reached 10 yet. Use your hands to see how much of a journey is this minute hand taken. Well, we know it's taken a 1/4 journey. It's pointing at the 3. And we know that the hour that we're still in, because we've not left hour 12 yet, so it's 1/4 past, and the hour that we're still in is 12. So there we go, 1/4 past 12, and on we go. I'm going to leave you to practice playing that. Again, if you're finding this too easy, why not challenge yourself on levels 4 and 5? Once you've done all that and you're feeling pretty confident, I've got a worksheet for you to complete that's uploaded onto this assignment for you. Take your time, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.